All right, Phil Lee returning with a new episode of Civil War Chat. It is now Thursday, the 7th of January, 2021, the day after the melee in Washington. And today I'm going to talk about one simple reason that Robert E. Lee merits honor by all Americans. And that my talk is inspired by a couple of younger men. I want to bring your attention to them if you don't know them. Tom Ritchie of tomritchie.net. He does a lot of videos on history. When he does focus on Civil War and Reconstruction, he tends to be objective. The other one is somebody I haven't met, though I've read some of his articles at the Abbeville Institute, and that's Jerry LaFurgy. He is a history professor in Australia, but he was educated in British Columbia. Now, like Ritchie, his focus is not necessarily the Civil War and Reconstruction, but he has written some good articles for the Abbeville Institute, and I would recommend them as well. So without any, yes, let me, I keep forgetting, click in the upper right, the notification bell when you want to be, if you want to be notified of my future presentations of Civil War Chat. So click that notification bell. And also I want to bring to your attention a book that I wrote called The Confederacy at Flood Tide, which has a lot of information in about Lee during the period from June of 1862 to December of 1862, when he brought the Confederacy closest to winning its independence. But it wasn't just him, but there's a lot more than just Lee involved in this book. But if you want to get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble's, any fine bookstore, it's $28. If you'd like to get a autographed copy directly from me, just email Phil_Lee, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. And if just let me know you want an autographed copy, we'll arrange for payment, and I will cover the postage if the destination is here in the United States. So let me go ahead and begin with the presentation I want to make. Yesterday's melee in Washington provides good reason to honor Robert E. Lee, because he demonstrated how he maintained dignity in defeat while convincing simultaneously many resentful Southerners to reconcile with their former enemies. At the end of the war between the states in 1865, he had as much reason as any Southerner to reject reconciliation with Northerners, but he didn't do that. To the contrary, he promoted reconciliation for the sake of the entire country. Shortly after Lee died in 1870, 5 years after the Civil War, his family gave biographer J. William Jones personal access to Lee's letters in the family's possession. Of this time, Jones wrote, quote, "When I had the privilege of examining his private letter book, I found it literally crowded with letters advising his old soldiers and others to submit to all authorities and become law-abiding citizens," close quote. In one letter, Lee wrote, quote, "The interests of Virginia are the same as those of the United States. Its prosperity will rise or fall with the welfare of the country." In an elegy written years later, another Southerner quoted a letter Lee wrote in response to a lady who still cherished her bitterness. Perhaps some of her sons were killed during the war between the states. But anyway, he answered her letter as follows, quote, "Madam, do not bring your sons up to detest the United States government. Recollect that we form one country now. Abandon all these animosities, all these local animosities, and make your sons Americans." Upon accepting the presidency of nearly bankrupt Washington College 4 months after Appomattox, Lee wrote the trustees, quote, "I think it the duty of every citizen in the present condition of the country to do all in his power to aid in the restoration of peace and harmony, and in no way to oppose the policy of the state or general governments. It is particularly incumbent on those charged with the instruction of the young to set them an example of submission to authority," close quote. A couple of months later, he wrote ex-Confederate General Pierre G.T. Beauregard, quote, after the surrender of the Southern armies in April 1865, it became my opinion that the duty of every citizen has become to cease opposition and place himself in a position to serve the country, close quote. By choosing to dutifully set a personal example, no man could have done more to advance reconciliation among Southerners than Lee. Union General Grant admitted as much, quote, except for a few political leaders, all of the people of the South will accept whatever he does as right and will be guided to a great extent by his example, close quote. Evidence that Grant was correct is provided by an incident involving former governor of Virginia, former Virginia governor, or actually antebellum Virginia governor Henry Weiss, and his son, who had been a captain in the Confederate Army. Less than 2 months after President Lincoln's assassination, and President Andrew Johnson required that former Confederate soldiers take a new Union loyalty oath in order to be granted amnesty, which they would want to do if they wanted to regain their voting rights and their property rights, especially real estate property. They would get no more rights to slaves, but real estate was certainly important. Many ex-Confederates, however, were insulted by the oath, believing that their surrender parole terms obviated the need for it. When Captain Weiss told his dad he had taken the oath, the father barked, "You have disgraced the family." His son replied, "But General Lee told me to do it." "Oh," said the father, "that alters the case. Whatever General Lee says is all right. I don't care what it is." Over a century ago, when historians were more interested in the military aspects of the war between the states than the social ones, one of them wrote, Lee took but 1 week to defeat McClellan's great army, relieve the siege of Richmond, and reinstall himself as the best loved hero in all of the South. Then followed in the course of time, the great battles of Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Wilderness, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, and Petersburg, in which his matchless leadership thrilled the world. But perhaps the true greatness of the man was more vividly displayed after his surrender at Appomattox, when he said, quote, I have led the young men of the South in battle. I have seen many of them fall under my standard. I shall devote my life now to training young men to do their duty in life. About 65 years ago, North Carolina author and big game hunter Robert Ruark wrote about Africa's Mau Mau uprising in his novel, Something of Value. He excerpted the title from a Basuto proverb, quote, if a man throws away his traditions, he had better first make certain that he has something of value to replace them, close quote. In the wake of the violence during much of year 2020, as well as yesterday in Washington, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney have a unique opportunity to promote peace and unity throughout America. And here's how. Permit Lee's statue to remain on Monument Avenue, give up all efforts to remove it, and scrub it clean. Okay, so let's get down here, see if I've got anything more I need to say. I guess not. Yeah, I was moving around some of my notes and everything, and as you can see, my background's changed, and this is here I am in my library, so I hope you all like having a look at my library. I'm going to switch it all from books to digital here before long. Okay, thanks for watching.